How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we come to you recapping Week 1 in the NCAA Football 2019 season, Season 4 of our Dynasty. We're going to start things off here, just a little bit of an intro for you guys, because we're not going to cover this week to week typically, but I want to give you just an overview of what we're looking for on the recruiting trail. You can see just by the targets that we have, the players that we need, things of that nature, who are our top returners for next year. You can see them from the top of the list, the top juniors we're going to have returning. We have 12 seniors currently on the roster, 8 of them on the defensive side of the football, including 3 on the defensive line and 3 cornerbacks as well. So those are the biggest things we're looking for. Our primary focus recruiting wise this year, we have 3 senior receivers, we have 3 senior cornerbacks, cornerback and receiver are the 2 biggest targets we have. Probably secondary behind that would be defensive line. So those are the targets we're heavily prioritizing. We don't even have a single true quarterback or true running back on the board. There's a couple of guys, couple of athletes and things like that probably could play receiver or running back if I chose to move them there, and it depends. If we bring in too many cornerbacks, then maybe we would move somebody to receiver or to halfback, depending on just what our team needs necessitate and if those players could fill that role better than the guys that we have there currently. But you can see as we go through our board, it's receivers. It is a few offensive linemen, because I do have a couple of guys leaving there and I always like to keep some depth in the offensive line. But then it's primarily cornerbacks, receivers, defensive linemen, a couple of athletes as well. So you can go through the list and see they're the guys that we're targeting here, and see their scout. I haven't scouted anybody. That's the one thing. My house rules are I never scout anybody before I sign them, and then I'm not able to add anybody to my board until a spot frees up from somebody signing elsewhere, which means these are the 35 guys that are on my board. They're the 35 guys I have to go after unless guys start signing with other programs. And so these are the guys we're prioritizing, who we're going after, who they're currently interested in. You can see there's some big name targets there, a few 5-stars and 4-stars that we're going after. And it remains to be seen who we're going to bring in, but those are our priorities as we move forward. Looking around week 1, some big blowout performances, some really high scoring affairs, which is fun to see. Penn State, our third opponent, will be in week 4, blows out Kent State 47-24. Ohio State puts up 40. Notre Dame, one of the big wins of the week, game of the week, 30-21 over Texas in a top 10 matchup. Georgia escapes Texas A&M. LSU blows out South Carolina 48-17. Another top 20 matchup, Tennessee beats Louisville 31-17. Alabama escapes Michigan State in overtime. Big performance from Jalen Hurts in that one. Across the ACC, Wake Forest does lose, so they start the season off not in the best fashion they'd hoped for. Miami blows out Toledo. I think Sheriff's had maybe 6 touchdowns, so a great performance from him on a Miami offense that's going to be incredibly dangerous this season. You can see NCAA Player of the Week, Isaiah Wright for Temple, 5 touchdowns in a loss. He had all 5 of Temple's touchdowns, 20 catches, basically 250 yards receiving. I mean, he had a season's worth of catches in one game, 5 touchdowns, great performance despite the losing effort in that one. So you can see wins around the country. Alabama won. Notre Dame moved up to 4 after their victory over Texas, who fell down to the 13 spot. Georgia moves up to 9 in spite of barely beating Texas A&M. Penn State's up to 12. Texas, like we mentioned, falls back to 13. We jump up a single spot up to 16 just because of Louisville losing and dropping down to 20th in the national rankings. And then Illinois comes up into 25th after Michigan State lost to Alabama, though they didn't drop very far because it was a pretty close effort. So you can see coming into week 2 here, it's going to have our opening game of the season. ACC football, probably the biggest game in the ACC besides us is Notre Dame taking on Syracuse at MetLife Stadium in New York City. Actually, it's in New Jersey, right? But another big one, Virginia. Bryce Perkins' debut under center for Virginia, taking on Justin Herbert and Oregon. So, of course, that's a big matchup. And then Wisconsin taking on Virginia Tech, 2 teams that are typically towards the top of their respective divisions in their conferences. Herbstreit, of course, picks Notre Dame to knock off Syracuse. Syracuse only won 2 games last year, and Notre Dame was on the verge of the playoffs, so that's to be expected. Washington taking on Michigan. Jim Harbaugh hosting the defending national champions. Michigan does have a game under their belt already, so possibly Washington, this is their season opener. Maybe they have a little bit of a struggle just because they're not warm. Another tough one, the Cowboy Classic. Georgia taking on Oklahoma. Kendall taking out over under center for Oklahoma for Kyler Murray, who's gone off to the NFL. Georgia has senior Jacob Eason again at quarterback. They've already played a game, so again, they're a bit fresher. Oklahoma is maybe shaking off some rust from last season, and we'll see how that game goes. Tennessee has Nebraska now. Nebraska, of course, won the Big Ten West last season. Tennessee won the SEC East, so a matchup of a couple of division winners with very talented squads. Wisconsin, Virginia Tech. Herb Street likes the Hokies in this match one. Again, two pretty evenly teams that are both, in the mix for the top of their respective divisions in their conferences. Big SEC game, one of the biggest conference games probably to start off the season here. Auburn taking on Florida, two really, really respected teams going head-to-head. And finally, your Pitt Panthers open up their season at home, taking on the Ohio Bobcats. And, of course, the big storyline here, Matt Canada, our former offensive coordinator, has moved on to Ohio to become their head coach. So it's a bit of a homecoming for him. He's been our offensive coordinator for the last 3 seasons throughout this whole dynasty. So him leaving, of course, has meant a change in our play style. We've got Mark Whipple as our offensive coordinator now. Canada's running Ohio's offense, so I expect to see some rushing attacks, definitely mixing in the passing game, but a good balanced attack from them. They do have some good quarterbacks and good receivers. Justin Lane, redshirt junior for Ohio, 70 catches, almost 1,000 yards last season. And he's got Quentin Maxwell throwing him the ball, who threw 25 touchdowns against 15 interceptions last year, almost 200 yards a game. And he's improved to where he's a 92 overall this season. So I think those are their two real key talented players. They don't have a ton of ability beyond that. And like I said, Canada likes to rush the ball. He likes to mix up the attack, but they don't have a lot of ability running the ball. They have, like a freshman running back who's like 67 overall, a couple of good receivers. Their secondary is very good. So like I mentioned, we're probably going to focus on more of an aerial attack this season with just the ability that we have at receiver. Maurice French, Aaron Matthews, Trey Tipton, Paul Lease, Jay Keys even factoring in there, Kenny Pickett throwing the ball. We don't have a ton of running back depth at this current moment in time. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can compete against an Ohio team that probably the strength of their defense is their secondary. And for us, our goal is to try and limit their passing attack because their weakness is definitely their rushing game. They have 5 receivers over 81 overall, so they actually have good depth at receiver, a good tight end, very good quarterback. So our goal would just be to limit their ability to make big plays with the passing game, force them into running the ball if we can limit their deep opportunities, and just keep them in check offensively so that we can just do enough to win this game. We want to get through this game. We want to get through Tulane. We want to be 2-0 heading into our big matchup with Penn State, and this is where we need to get the season off on the right track. So you can see Ohio is still a very good team, but it's one that we should be able to move forward and beat. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Give me a score prediction in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know what's the final going to be. Pitt versus Ohio. Will we win this game? What will the score be as we debut the modifications of our uniforms? You'll see a little bit of changes to our uniforms compared to what we've been wearing the past few seasons in the Dynasty. So I hope you enjoy how much they pop on the screen. I think it looks fantastic, and I'm really excited to get things underway. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hail to Pitt. We'll see you in the game. Ohio versus Pitt coming up next on the channel. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.